Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 32. Shri Mahaswami, the sage with eyes of light, the diary of a seeker of truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall listen to the second section of part 2 of this divine book under the subtitle The Lotus Pond. Karveti Nagar, Monday, 20th September 1971. Different ways of darshan. Last night I saw Shri Mahaswami almost drown in a pool of insistent visitors. The patience and the goodwill he is able to show as he listens to them is divine. All come to ask, if not a tangible thing, at least anugraha, grace, or purna anugraha, full grace. He pacifies them and all leave convinced that they have been taken care of. Even if he could give to each only 1 or 2 seconds, as on such a crowded day as today, Shri Mahaswami is so calm and at the same time so firm in receiving them and then in moving them on by a characteristic movement of his head, then of his hand. Even if a visitor had not felt anything in the heart, simply by having seen Shri Mahaswami, he would have been certain of having entrusted his destiny to safe hands. Depending on the case, Shri Mahaswami grants the visitor a few seconds or several minutes. Sometimes he talks, then he keeps quiet, the head turned down, and restarts through words or only through signs if he decides that a period of silence is necessary. The blessings are diverse. The majority of the visitors that pass in file, generally at a distance of not less than 2 meters, are received with abhaya of a single hand or by both hands, very rarely with hands in anjali in front of the chest. The palm can be directed towards the heart of the person or towards their head. The blessing by the hands can be repeated. He almost never blesses with his danda in hand during the public darshan. It is a special gesture reserved for the salute to the sun and to the divine form murti in a temple. Often, Shri Mahaswami stares for a fraction of a second at a visitor or beyond that person. Other times, after having heard the request, he concentrates for 2 or 3 seconds downwards at the earth. Then he blesses or not by the use of his hand. Sometimes he remains without movement, concentrated without breathing, only to inhale afterwards deeply. In this case, one has the impression that he has taken within him the demand. Until now, I have observed him receiving tens of thousands of visitors. Never have I observed that he was acting outwardly the same way as in my case. It seemed to me that he had received in a similar manner certain foreign visitors, but this is rare and for a very short time. However, what happens in my absence or on a non-visible plane, I cannot say. Later, in the evening, I had left the hermitage while Shri Mahaswami was still talking with some visitors. At the mill, once my dinner was taken, I felt that I should return to the lotus pond. It was 10:30 p.m. and all the sleeping places in the spots which I prefer, usually touched by Shri Mahaswami, were occupied. I discovered a distant place towards south where the more traditional people performed their morning and evening rituals. I fell asleep with difficulty. After a short sleep and an aggressive dream of the flesh, I suddenly woke up. Shri Mahaswami, who was in the hut, awake, seemed to have waited for me as if to protect me by his presence. I did not go back to sleep. I preferred to listen to him. In the silence of the night, in the half-darkness, as the flickering faint light of the oil lamp could hardly pierce from under the door, he continued to talk inside, perhaps with one of his assistants, who, however, could not be heard. His limpid and soothing voice undulated without haste, a spray of sound rays that came from the heart of the earth, modulated with simple joy in the quiet mystery of the night. I stood there until midnight as the only witness of a conversation that Swamiji seemed to conduct with himself. Then I prostrated in front of the door and left for the mill. By morning, I woke up ashamed by the dream during my last night's short sleep on the step of the lotus pond, and was unwilling to return to the hermitage. But I immediately felt that I had to go. Some clear arguments came to me. Sri Mahaswami is very paternal. He was calling me to the hermitage by showing that once I have given to him all responsibility, it was for him to decide if I should or not be in his presence. Following the meditative peak of yesterday and the dream at the beginning of the night, one could expect that my today's experiences would be less powerful. I could still meditate 2 full hours, the first on the same place as yesterday, that is, on the other side of the reservoir, and the second very near to the hut, almost at the opening of the door. As Sri Mahaswami had not left his room, I tried to reach for his look, for a fraction of a second at least, in between the heads and shoulders of noisy visitors. After 9:30 a.m., I went, as usual, to Gandhi Ashram, where I got engaged for 4 or 5 hours in different household activities. With all its lack of comforts, it remains nevertheless a house where Sri Mahaswami has stayed, be it only for a night. In addition, it is a place in front of which he passes often en route for the Venugopala temple. I returned to the mill, where I took rest for 1 hour. This, despite of the recommendation of the traditional Indian medicine to avoid daytime sleep, at least during the cooler season. Hardly were there left 1 or 2 hours for reading and writing. Then, towards 6 p.m., I came to the hermitage for 2 or 3 hours, which eventually will go on until midnight and beyond. As I have to avoid every fatigue of the nervous system in order to preserve my capacity for meditation, my hands were bound by this demanding daily program, and I was unable to do any intellectual work such as reading, even if I wanted to. After 5 to 9 hours a day spent in the immediate presence of Sri Mahaswami, with all this subtle pressure of grace, it was inadvisable to strain the mind anymore. Besides, if I insisted on mental work, a severe headache would make itself known. Karveti Nagar, Tuesday, 21st September 1971. The marvelous dart. The days here when the mind is calm are few. Even rarer are the days when I am able to think of Ishvara at every instant, when Ishvara is just behind the stage, when the things of the world prove to be nothing else than simple stage settings, barely moving curtains of painted cloth. The situation can be even better when the truth from behind the stage settings comes so near as to render negligible the thinly colored veil of the world. Yesterday evening, at the hermitage, Sri Mahaswami, who had just finished his ablutions, sat in waiting on the last step of the pond facing south. His body seemed to be made out of a thin layer of wax. Under this fine layer, ready to melt, one could guess the radiant liquefied ether. I felt he embraced me straight away with 2 arms of snowy perfumed cotton, invisible but sensible, that led me in front of him, such as to be able to see him facing the north. As per the Hindu tradition, Shiva, as the Guru, resides in the north. He looks towards south, the realm of death, and holds it in check. I did not have the time to sprinkle a few drops of water on myself, nor to round the hermitage by the right side. Only a few people milled around. A gap appeared in front of Sri Mahaswami, and with dusk approaching, I could come closer. 4 boys of the Veda school from Kanchipuram were reciting Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. All of a sudden, Sri Mahaswami pointed towards his eyelids with a little fan made of a single plant leaf he kept in hand. I understood, and I aimed for the windows of his heart. I clearly perceived the luminous point of his left eye, the one by which he still sees, as the sharp end of a tiny fire dart ready to flash. I placed myself in the path of the presumed trajectory of this projectile. Sri Mahaswami stood, totally immobile, in such a position that I could observe 3 times at regular intervals this marvelous dart. Having pierced my eyes, the arrow reached the reservoir of light in my heart, which I could not open by myself. 3 times I felt my heart filling itself with waves of solar light. In the morning, the 5 or 6 hours at Gandhi Ashram had been especially difficult. Minor health discomforts added themselves to small complications in my daily activities, combined with the need of money. The donor at Salem was late in the dispatching of the monthly pension. All this gives the illusion that the life is an antechamber of hell. I left for the mill by 2 p.m., but the situation did not become better as I came in one of the periods of intense noise of the machines, which recharged the illusion that dragged me. Now with a deafening, living hell. Still, at the mill, the influence of Swamiji was easier to feel, which surely is because the place is nearer on a direct road to the lotus pond. I am not happy at the possibility of going to Madras or Pondicherry in the first half of October and then staying at Kanchipuram for a few weeks. Karveti Nagar, Wednesday, 22nd September 1971. The hands that carve the universe. Yesterday, on my arrival at the reservoir, Sri Mahaswami, seated on the last step, had already started his puja that this time was to be dedicated for the 9 coming nights, Navratri, to the great goddess. I felt like paralyzed, being compelled to stay on the northern side. Only after some 30 minutes did I have permission to proceed to the southern side. I placed myself at 8 meters at his right and slightly behind him. His prayerful movements towards the directions of the space were certainly intended also for me, because the fingers of his both hands united were directed towards me by an extended effort above the right shoulder, which he was not doing on the left side. Now, when the hands that carved the universe were turned towards me, an electric current cleaned me. It not only purified, but drew me closer to my true nature of light. It was as if by the encirclement gestures, Sri Mahaswami was tearing lumps of what this one had been and was offering them towards the east, probably to the goddess or to the invisible beings he had convened. I felt more and more insubstantial and luminous. Once the gestures of appeal and discussion with the invisible were completed, there followed those of the offering. As usual, he gave away white, red and rose flowers, kumkum, rice, tulasi leaves and sandal paste. With every movement, he gave out also a part of me. Then he stood and performed with his danda a few movements in circle. I took advantage of this moment in order to come nearer at 4 meters. He sat once again and remained immobile in meditation. He permitted me to follow him. Sri Mahaswami annihilated the wild round of ideas in my mind through the name of Shiva, which he caused to resound in my heart. I repeated this name while excluding any other bit of thought right up to the moment when the name exploded like a sun in my heart. the Purusha in the form of the sun. Before returning to the hermitage, Sri Mahaswami immobilized himself once again in meditation. I immediately followed him inside. He did not move until he initiated in me the same sun as before. It was a solar disk at the moment it rises and crosses the morning horizon. It was yellow, reddish, and clear. Its rays were pulsating in concentric circles and spread through my entire body as if they were clearing up the heavy smell of a moldy cave. Everything lasted only 2 or 3 minutes. The light fainted, decreased, and disappeared quicker than it had appeared towards the hidden corner from where it had flashed out. It was somewhere in the region of the heart. It then was replaced by the consciousness of the body and the mind. For a few hours, once I was cleaned of the earthly mud, life became easier for me. After a rapid return to the mill for nutritional reasons, I came back to the hermitage by 10:30 p.m. I had the permission to meditate some time in front of the hut where Sri Mahaswami pretended to sleep. It seemed that a flood of white foam, as of the water gushing from the channel of a hydroelectric power station, came out from the side of his head and feet and broke through the walls of the hut. I could not stay long, as the release of this column of force was overwhelming. In order not to return too early to my residence, I walked to the other side of the reservoir, muttering against my destiny. I took the chance to meditate with closed eyes while facing the hermitage at some 80 meters distance. Almost immediately, Sri Mahaswami appeared before me under his translucent form that even the eyes could see. He took charge of my body and proceeded to render it transparent centimeter by centimeter. He started from below and took away one by one the organs, so they were no more mine. They had become shades, contours, thoughts, simply names. The Mooladhara and Swadhisthana chakras remained as two white pearls encircled by an uncertain haze. The golden ethereal form of Sri Mahaswami mounted slowly towards the abdomen and the back. All the organs lost their shape. The Manipura shined as a little lake in bright white glass. He continued his ascent through the chest, where he seemed not be willing to linger, perhaps as it was the place he had visited more often. He ignored the neck. On the contrary, he lingered longer in the head in two precise places, the hypophysis and the epiphysis, the pituitary gland and pineal gland. He insisted so much that my entire old body became his. The pollen grain of the eye remained lost on a minute remnant of the bodily structure. It was stuck on the dry petal of consciousness and played still the slight role of witness. Sri Mahaswami did not yet want that this one should be engulfed in the golden cloud that appeared as Swamiji's body and which was now in the process of totally replacing mine. The place where previously the heart was situated was replaced by a very clear, golden bright image of Adi Shankara encircled by fine rays. As soon as some small thought of duality seemed to peep through at the surface of the translucent cloud, the great goddess who was also present characteristically cut free the bonds of the Purusha from the perishable mass of the body. What happened afterwards is unknown. For a time the pollen grain of the eye on its dry petal came to be absorbed. Where? By whom? Probably in and by the same will that had governed everything up to now. Then the same will decided to move in the opposite direction. Out of nothing, it made appear the grain of the eye on the petal of the consciousness and then sent the vague ideas of the regions of the body back in the reverse order of their disappearance. Head, once again heart, chest, abdomen, limbs. At the beginning, these ideas showed themselves like the crystals of salt dissolved in hot water, which resume their old shapes as the liquid cools down. None were missing. Once the usual consistence was reached, the pieces of the body mental puzzle received the appropriate orders and started functioning. The organs in charge of the information brought forth different sensations. Those in charge of the movements started manifesting themselves, everyone according to their capacities. The bellows of the lungs pumped the air, the flesh, heart, somewhat giddy, restarted courageously its tick-tock. This one found himself back in the old dress, dhoti and shawl, cloth bag on his shoulder, sitting on the same jute bag that was his seat. I stood up in order to leave while thinking after all this that our usual vocabulary is rather poor. It knows only the words life and death. I thought that it was all finished, but another decision had already been taken. After some gymnastic exercises, I was impelled to sit once again on the grass and restart the plunge inward. There was imposed upon me the necessity to once more untie the body. This was possible only for a few seconds. However, there was a feeling of insecurity that became quite menacing. In a flash, by way of protection, I somehow mentally rushed to Kanchipuram, where in the temple of the great goddess, the Adi Shankara statue is enthroned. After taking his blessing, I then spontaneously expressed the wish to make the 40 meters jump over the lake up to the hut. I prepared myself when suddenly I felt a presence in front of my feet. It was Sri Mahaswami. I saw him clearly, a golden statue. He seemed not to agree with what I intended. I understood. I must come back to the transitory reality. I complied without hesitation. He alone knows better what I need. As soon as I opened the physical eyes, I saw once again Sri Mahaswami, this time on the other side of the lotus pond, where he was walking down the flight of steps towards the water. I copied his movement almost exactly on the opposite side. Then I absorbed some drops of liquid sanctified by his touch. No doubt that was what Swamiji wanted, as he immediately turned and moved up towards the hermitage. The rest of the morning passed wonderfully. There was no trace of yesterday's doubts. Devotees, we shall continue to listen to the lotus pond in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara. Jaya Jaya Shankara.